Order, order. Jason McCartney to move the motion.
Mr. Pritchard, it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. Thank you. Labour's ruinous PFI deal. Tory top-down reorganisation. Socialist independence sniping. Lib Dem opportunism. UKIP privatising the NHS. Socialist workers using the issue to scrap Trident and bring down capitalism. Right, that's all the party politics done. Finished. Let's put it to one side, and I hope that for the next 89 minutes, we can continue with our cross-party consensus in making a compelling case for keeping our full A&E services at Huddersfield Royal Infirmary. I'd like to thank my parliamentary colleagues for attending today, particularly the honourable members for Huddersfield and Dewsbury, who along with me, applied for this debate. I was the one who was fortunate to be successful, but we are all here together as well with the member for Batley and Spen today with one strong local voice. The background to this issue, Mr. Pritchard, is that the Greater Huddersfield and Calderdale clinical commissioning groups have unanimously voted to put their right care, right time, right place proposal to a public consultation. This could lead to Huddersfield losing our town's A&E service. We anticipate that the 12-week consultation could start next Monday, the 8th of February. The CCG's preferred option is to close Huddersfield's A&E and keep the provision at Calderdale Royal Hospital in Halifax. The background to this proposal is the ruinous private finance initiative deal that was negotiated in the 1990s and signed in 1998. Now, the initial cost of Calderdale Royal Hospital was £64.6 million, but will end up costing the Calderdale and Huddersfield NHS Foundation Trust an incredible £773.2 million when the deal expires in 2058. This scandalous PFI is now influencing clinical and community health decisions to an enormously detrimental effect. This dodgy deal is set to cost lives. We are set to lose our A&E in Huddersfield as the PFI moneymakers stuff their pockets. Throughout the last 12 months, our local CCGs were muting a reorganisation and reconfiguration of emergency and acute care and high-risk planned care. It was the HRI that was then the preferred location. In fact, the CCG's own modelling of an option 5B stated that Huddersfield Royal Infirmary should provide all acute and emergency care and clinically high-risk planned care because, and I quote, it was in line with clinical model of safer, higher quality services with 24-hour consultant-led care, undisturbed planned care, with a more resilient workforce model. It is only when the PFI financial considerations are factored in that suddenly the appalling proposition of closing A&E at Huddersfield emerges. What's been the reaction to this plan? Well, personally, I was shocked at this proposal, and so was our community. I live in the village of Honley. I don't live anywhere else. I don't have a second home. It's where I live. And I've had to use A&E at HRI a number of times where I've always received excellent care, and I'd like to put on record my thanks to the wonderful staff there. In 1995, I fell seriously ill on my return from deployment in Turkey and northern Iraq while serving in the Royal Air Force. I had to go to A&E. And 18 months ago, I fractured my elbow in a fall whilst running the Honley 10K race. Being fit isn't good for your health, by the way. My parents, who just live up the valley, have used our A&E. My mum had a bad fall on the ice a couple of years ago and had severe facial injuries. So getting to our local A&E in wintry conditions was crucial. But I'm so proud that our community, Mr. Pritchard, has come together to fight to keep our A&E at HRI. Carl Deach set up a Facebook group which is now over 46,000, it's so many, 46,000 members. And from that, we've already seen a rally in St George's Square in Huddersfield, where over 1,000 local people came together. The group has formed a campaign committee, and they are meeting again tonight to plan the way forward. So I'd just like to say a huge thank you to Carl and all the team of volunteers for a superb community campaign. We're right behind you. I've told you my story about using A&E, and on Saturday at the Huddersfield Town match, Sean Doyle, a constituent and friend of mine from Brockholes, was on the pitch at half-time, speaking movingly about when he had a massive heart attack in Greenhead Park in Huddersfield. He owes his life to the emergency care he received at HRI, which was just up the road. A&E staff there used a new electronically powered chest compression system. Sean says he wouldn't have survived if he'd had to go to Halifax. I've received many emails telling me how other constituents owe their lives to the location and proximity of HRI A&E. It's how the golden hour saved them. This campaign to save our A&E is by far and away the biggest local issue I have dealt with whilst I've been the Member of Parliament for Colne Valley. There are posters everywhere. Volunteers are taking petitions from door to door. The hands-off HRI hashtag is being projected onto public buildings, and we're all receiving hundreds of individual emails. It's so clear that this proposal is just plain wrong. Yes, I'll give way to the honourable member for Batley.
The proposed reorganisation, which would leave Huddersfield without an A&E, is of course also being done under the rationale that there'll be no change of provision in the other half of Kirklees district, but the diminution of services at Dewsbury and District Hospital are a significant change, not least to the A&E, and obviously that sits within my constituency, but is a key service for local constituents in neighbouring Dewsbury and elsewhere. Do you not agree that actually that is an embarrassing oversight, and with the potential to leave the 11th largest district in England without a fully functioning A&E, and that's not in the public interest and not in our constituents' interest?
Absolutely. The Honourable Lady makes a great point, and she must have read my speech in about 3 pages' time where I make the exact point, so absolutely spot on. Huddersfield Royal Infirmary is actually in my Colne Valley constituency, which also includes the western side of Huddersfield, Colne Valley itself, and Home Valley, where I live. It means that if any of my 81,000 constituents or their children need to go to A&E in the back of an ambulance, they will actually have to pass HRI before undertaking the congested trek over to Halifax. And in fact, the highest number of signatories to the parliamentary petition are from my constituency. And by the way, thank you again to the 46,000 plus who have so far signed that petition, and to the volunteers who are working tirelessly to get more folk signed up. And whilst I'm thanking people, can I also say a big thank you to our local Huddersfield Examiner newspaper. In an era of digital online media and falling newspaper sales, we are so lucky to have a quality 6-day-a-week local paper which is backing this campaign 100%. Thank you to the editor Roy Wright, and thank you to his energetic and committed team of local journalists. Their excellent in-depth analysis has included an interview with Mike Ramsden, chairman of Hull and East Yorkshire Hospital Trust. Now, he's quoted as saying, "The reality is the CCG in Huddersfield exists to represent the health issues of the local population. If the proposals are now being delivered because of the financial pressure on a hospital in Halifax, then it's my belief that it's not a matter for Huddersfield CCG." And he goes on to say, "It can't be seen to be fair that a PFI deal in Halifax is taken on by the people of Huddersfield." So that's the view of a top NHS boss. Now let me just address the issue of this proposal coming from the CCG, the Clinical Commissioning Group. It's a panel of local doctors, and yes, I voted for CCGs to take over from primary care trusts because I saw the faceless bureaucrats of the old PCT downgrade maternity at HRI. Remember that back in 2008? Because I believe healthcare professionals will, in the end of the day, and they're going to need a lot of support and encouragement from us. Make the right decisions for patients. We need, though, to make sure that the voices of all our local doctors are heard, not just those on the CCG. A doctor from a surgery in my constituency wrote to me to say that moving A&E services to the town with the smallest population is crazy, and I quote. She said, though, she was unfortunately not one of the doctors on the panel of the CCG. Maybe we wish she was. And another local GP, a high-profile one from Colne Valley, says care for patients in Kirklees and Calderdale should not be driven by the PFI. Strategy should be driven by care needs, not financial concerns. Now, as I've said, we have excellent cross-party parliamentary cooperation on this campaign, and I think local folk have really, really appreciated this. And I know myself and my colleagues here are committed to continuing this unity. Now, I don't know if the Minister has ever visited Huddersfield. He's trying to remember. But we are a growing, vibrant university town. If this appalling proposal goes ahead, we would be the largest town in our country not to have an A&E within 5 miles of it. Huddersfield has a population of 146,000 and growing. We have over 20,000 students, thousands of international students as well, at our award-winning Huddersfield University. And sadly, I've already had an email from a father whose son is not now going to apply to Huddersfield University for fear of not having a local A&E. And if Dewsbury loses its own A&E, as the member for Batley quite rightly said, we'll have the whole of the Kirklees Council area without an A&E. That's 442,500 residents without an A&E in their council area. And the Honourable Member for Huddersfield and his team have calculated that this would potentially lead to an extra 157 deaths a year, and I'm sure he'll elaborate on that later. Now, Mr. Pritchard, it would be very easy to go down the route in this debate of just being emotional about this. But as the Minister is saying, we're laying out hard facts about why this proposal is plainly wrong. We will all be making these points and arguments to the CCG as well once the consultation starts. But I'd just like to highlight 2 other main areas. Syngenta on Leeds Road is a top-tier coma safety site. It handles parquet, sodium cyanide, methyl chloride, and other operators on site handle toxic and carcinogenic chemicals. Its own community safety plan states we handle chemical substances which are classified under the regulations as toxic, very toxic, oxidizing, and flammable. Just imagine if there were an incident. The proximity of an A&E would be crucial. Has the CCG looked at this? In response to such an incident, response times and getting to a close-by emergency treatment centre would be everything. The CCG have not even mentioned Syngenta in their consultation document. Travel times, and this really is a key issue. Remember the golden hour. It's all well and good talking about average travel times to an A&E, but emergency care isn't about averages. My constituents have been sending me Garmin and TomTom reports, other sat-navs are available, of their recent journeys from Huddersfield to Halifax. It can take up to 45 minutes, in some instances even longer. It's an extremely congested journey, bad weather, floods, damaged bridges, increasing housing developments in Lindley, the Ainley Top roundabout. See our local road system creaking at the seams. And that's before we even start analysing peak travel times from, say, Haydedge or Marsden in my constituency. My constituent Elaine writes that she has regular appointments on a Thursday morning at 9:15 a.m. at Calderdale. And she's told me that the Ellen bypass is regularly blocked twice a day, with her average journey time taking over an hour. It recently took a Huddersfield Examiner photographer 52 2 minutes in morning rush hour traffic from the centre of Huddersfield to Calderdale Royal Hospital. Hepworth, in my constituency, to Calderdale Royal is 13.7 miles. And most parts of my constituency in Kirklees will have to travel past Huddersfield Royal Infirmary, or what's left of it, to get to Calderdale Royal Hospital. HRI serves a number of outlying and rural communities. Me and my team have been scouring the consultation document, and there's some really interesting little facts in there. On page 215 of the consultation document, it acknowledges that the population of Calderdale and Greater Huddersfield is ageing slightly faster in the rural areas than in the urban. And on page 239, we learn that A&E attendances are high amongst those aged 65 to 80 and highest for those aged over 80. So those most likely to need A&E will now have further to travel, and this will cost lives. Page 76 says, most journeys to A&E under the dual sites are less than 30 minutes. We may want to dispute that, by the way. And it goes on to say, however, the document admits that a single site, and this is the official consultation document, could push travel times well over this, particularly at peak times. Let me just repeat that. It could push travel times well over this, the 30 minutes, and this is in the consultation document, particularly at peak times. My constituents at the top of the valleys in Home Village or Marsden could therefore face an hour to get to Halifax. And this brings me on to the point from the Honourable Lady for Batley and Spen. Already, patients that live in the tops of the valleys are being diverted to Oldham and Barnsley. So the predicted patient models just do not stack up. My mum and dad, regularly from Homebridge, are sent to Barnsley for routine tests. Huddersfield needs to be at the heart of our region's emergency care. This proposal just hasn't been thought through. This whole proposal needs to be scrapped, with Barnsley, Oldham, Wakefield, Bradford, Halifax, all part of a proper plan for emergency healthcare for where we live. I'll gladly give way.
Just to reinforce that point with the Minister that it does seem that there is a lack of regional oversight about the implications of both this public consultation and what's happening at Dewsbury and District Hospital. And I know we've raised this directly with the Minister already. I raised this with the Mid-Yorkshire NHS Trust last Friday to say, who holds responsibility for the pan-Kirklees, pan-Yorkshire strategy to make sure that none of our constituents lose out from these individual public consultations and reconfigurations? It would be very helpful, Minister, if you really do focus on that oversight. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that incredibly constructive comment. So I've been talking about how we need a sort of regional plan for this. I've been trying to, as I'm starting to come towards the end of my speech, dispel some myths. And I do just want to say this. Some party political activists have been bleating on about budget cuts, but this is just a myth. It's plain wrong. This proposal, if it goes ahead, could actually end up costing £490 million because they're proposing to knock down HRI and replace it with a much smaller hospital on an adjacent site. Surely this financial injection, if secured, and that's a big if, would make better sense investing in A&E in both Halifax and Huddersfield. So, what happens next? I've got some specific questions here to the Minister. Myself and the Honourable Member for Huddersfield wrote to the Secretary of State last week. Will the Minister expedite an urgent meeting with myself, the Honourable Member for Huddersfield, the Honourable Member for Dewsbury and for Batley and for others who aren't here, with the Secretary of State to discuss the future of emergency healthcare in Huddersfield and Calderdale? Now, in an ideal world, I would like the Minister to intervene to avert this appalling proposal, but I know he will be, I hope he will be explaining what the process is in his contribution later. In the meantime, though, will the Minister launch an investigation into the PFI deal, which many are calling one of the worst ever signed. And I'll quote the Prime Minister, who on visiting Halifax last year said, "After the election, we want to do what we've done with other hospitals, which is to sort out the PFI mess and financial mess that they're in." Will the Minister explore the potential of uncoupling the Calderdale and Huddersfield NHS Foundation Trust so that the PFI deal can be tackled, but it also can be removed from clinical decision making? But can I just put on record, we want to see Calderdale Hospital keep its A&E. Calderdale is increasing in population, as is Huddersfield, as is Kirklees. In conclusion, I think, we think, the campaigners think, all of our community thinks, that both Huddersfield and Halifax require and deserve excellent A&E services. But these decisions should be based on saving more lives, improving experiences, and delivering better outcomes, not short-term financial implications. Patient safety must come first. That means keeping our A&E. So, Minister, hands off our HRI. Thank you.
Question is